Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. And I am recording this, and I will be putting it on our YouTube channel in the next few days. Welcome to the Mass Pollinator Network September meeting. We welcome back Trevor Smith, who will talk to us about our future with water. First, I have a few reminders, and I will put links in the chat once Trevor starts talking so I don't take up any extra time. Our next brown bag lunch is Wednesday, October 2nd, starting at noon, goes till 1 p.m. You are welcome to drop in for any amount of that time. Bring questions, bring projects you're working on. Just come and listen. Bring your lunch. We encourage people to eat. So we hope to see you there. And then our October monthly presentation is Tuesday, October 29th. And our very own steering committee member, Heidi Dollard, will be presenting on the fall cleanup, which, as you all can guess, is not necessarily about cleaning up. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Trevor.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for spending your evening with us. So my name is Trevor Smith. I am currently the Design and Education Manager for Weston Nurseries. Prior to that, I had 22 years of owning my own business, Land Escapes, which is now known as Re-Earth Boston or Re-Earth. And so through that entire career, I worked with sustainable land care, or as I call it, regenerative land care. And we will talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So tonight's presentation, or what we'll be going through with tonight, is going to be different methods for homeowners and land care professionals alike to adopt on their properties the pros, the cons, and the how-tos of different methods of green stormwater infrastructure, or GSI, as you may know it, or nature-based solutions is another way of knowing it. I encourage, while we're going along, if you have an immediate question, to just go ahead and unmute. So if I am talking about permeable pavements, which we will cover this evening, and you have a question regarding that, go ahead and ask that question. If you have a larger overarching question, when the presentation ends, we will come back to this view that we're in right now, and we can just go back and forth, and I will answer questions for as long as you would like, or as long as Renee would let us. So we will certainly go from there. So like I said, if you want to unmute, I will end up collapsing all of you while I'm giving the presentation so I can read the slides. So I won't see any hands up, and I will not be monitoring the chat. So, but putting your questions in the chat, I will not find them there. So it's better if we just have a verbal back and forth either during or at the end. And with that, I am going to share my screen and ask for just a thumbs up if you can see a giant bubble.
Great.
Perfect. Okay, then we are good to go. So we will be talking, like I said, stormwater management. This picture right here, I will just share with you really quick. I have a very small bucket list. The two things on my bucket list were to see the glaciers before they disappear, and that is where this was from. That is a 700-year-old bubble from within a glacier. In Iceland, and it was just an absolute privilege to see and experience, and to know that bubble has been there longer than the United States itself, or anything that many of us have actually known. So I thought that was absolutely fascinating. I have been in love with water since I was very small, and it was no surprise when it became the majority of my career. Just because I am fascinated with water. I will not necessarily be offering up my bio. What I will tell you is everything that I am telling you tonight, I have learned the hard way. So I can tell you how to do it because I have certainly done it wrong. And that is the only way and the best way that I can say you can kind of take what I am saying. It is certainly not gospel, but you can hear what I'm saying because I have done that. What we are going to go through tonight is sections. For instance, like I said, permeable pavements. We are going to talk about, and each one will have somewhat of a case study. So I will talk about permeable pavements, and then I will talk about the installation of permeable pavements. The purpose of this, from whatever your walk of life you're coming from, whether you're in the business itself or just a landowner. The purpose of this is to really demystify and get you familiar with. So if you are somebody doing it yourself, you will have an idea how to attack it yourself. If you are going to hire somebody to do it for you, you will know how it is supposed to go and what to look out for, or how to vet the land care professional you are looking for. If you are a designer or an installer, the idea here is to just kind of get some of those initial questions and hang-ups out of the way so that you can adopt this. This is all information that I share freely because I would like as many people as possible, as with every single one of my talks, whether we're talking habitat or stormwater, I want as many people as possible to be empowered and inspired to start doing this, because we do not have the time for proprietary information, as I feel, and I believe sharing freely is the only way to go about it. If you could all make sure that you are on mute unless you are asking a question, I would appreciate it. And here we go. So you are here exactly where you should be, because if you are here, that means you care. And so for all of you on here, I am very much appreciative that you care and that you would like to expand your knowledge and you would like to understand more about one of the many factors and the many symptoms of climate change. There is something to be learned from a rainstorm. When met with a sudden shower, you try not to get wet and we run quickly along the road. By doing such things as passing under the eaves of houses, you still get wet. When you are resolved from the beginning, you will not be perplexed, though you will still get the same soaking. This understanding extends to everything. This is one of my favorite quotes for a number of reasons. One, it is a wonderful kind of belief or something to kind of take on with the rest of your life. It is great to just apply this to life and just know that when it's raining, you are going to get wet. The other thing is with this is, if you have not, and I'm assuming if you're on here, you probably have, but if you have not, especially during a summer rain, I wouldn't suggest it during October, November, but during a summer rain, if you have never just gone outside, left your phone and wallet and everything inside, and just surrendered to nature and allow yourself to get soaked to the skin, as you begin to get wet, you will be uncomfortable and you will say, the crazy bald guy told me to do this on the webinar, and I don't know why I listened to him. But as you actually just kind of release yourself and surrender to nature, it's actually an amazing experience to just become kind of that close and that in tune and just kind of let yourself go. Because so much of what we've done as humans is tried to control nature, and, you know, with climate control, just with our dwellings and everything, but rarely anymore do we just go out and just surrender ourselves to the nature that we are. So I'd like to start with a quick exercise. This is an imaging exercise. So imaging is different than imagining. So if I am to imagine a forest, the forest that I will imagine is probably going to look like Narnia. If I am imaging a forest, the forest that I'm going to image will likely be the forest that I grew up in. I grew up backing up to conservation land and played in the woods my entire life, my entire young life. So I would like you to just, for this, and since we're all basically off screen, you can close your eyes or not, but I would like you to image a rainstorm in a rural area. And I would like you to picture those raindrops falling down. You have now, so you're outside surrendering to nature. And you are outside, and as that water is falling, just kind of picture, you're going to image, where does that water go? And what does that water touch on its way to the ground? What happens to that water when it reaches the ground? In this rural area, you're met with a sudden shower, summer shower. What happens to that water a few hours after the rainstorm? How about a few days? Where is that water a week after that rain? What effect does that water have on the earth, the soil, the biology, and the climate and temperature? You're standing in the middle of a field or in the middle of the woods. And how does that water, how does that summer rain affect the human population? So just picture yourself out there getting soaked and following that raindrop. Where does it go? What is it touching? And what effect does it have on the earth and on the other people around it? All right. Now I would like you to image a rainstorm in an urban area. You are in downtown Hartford, downtown Boston, wherever it might be, it starts to pour. Where does that water go? And what does that water touch on its way to the ground? What happens to that urban rainstorm when the water reaches the ground? What happens to the water a few hours after the storm? How about a few days or a week? Where is that water a few days or a week after that storm? What effect does the water have on the earth, the soil and the biology, the climate and temperature? How does it affect the human population? So this is an exercise that I actually developed during my time as a green infrastructure professional. I really needed to design and wanted to design systems. Go ahead.
Good down. Go on.
So I really wanted to design the best stormwater systems possible, and figured that the best way to do that would be to really just kind of image water and really think about what is happening with that water and where that water is going. Now, if this was live, like in person, and we had much more time, I would ask each and every one of you what it was that you were thinking. Just to give you kind of a brief on some of the things that I came up with, in a rural environment, that water is touching trees and it's touching the perennial layer. It's got if everybody could please mute, that would be great. It's touching the tree and shrub layer, it's touching the perennial layer. It is getting set to the ground gently. And a few hours after that rainstorm, it is working its way through the soil. A few days after that rainstorm, it's working its way through the watershed. A week after that rainstorm, it may have made its way all the way to the base of the watershed. And its effect on the soil, earth, and biology is it is extremely enriching. It is also its effect on the human population and the climate and temperature. A rural rainstorm is certainly cooling, has a cooling effect. Now, it has the opposite effect in an urban environment. When you are surrounded by hot pavement and you get that summer shower, you actually get a whole lot of humidity. So it actually creates a very uncomfortable environment more often than not in a hot urban area. Because of all the humidity. It doesn't necessarily have the cooling, cleansing effect. And that water, once it hits the ground, is usually whisked away into one of our waterways within seconds or minutes after it hits the ground. And it actually doesn't spend any time working its way really through the watershed. It's ushered right along to actually the base of the watershed and undergoes very little filtration. And this is really the basis of nature-based solutions or green infrastructure. So we will be talking stormwater. But before we can talk stormwater, I would like to reacquaint you with water. Water is H2O, hydrogen 2 parts, oxygen 1. But there is a third thing that makes it water, and nobody knows what that is. So I am going to talk to you about really the 3 aspects of water that made me totally fall in love with it, and that I am to this day just enamored with. So the first is that water, what makes water so special to me is that it is a part of our everyday and we take it for granted. And it is also a part of everything in nature that is just beautiful and magical. So we all got up and we showered and we made our coffee or tea and we washed the dishes and our clothes and we are just always water in this country, especially water is just always there. We have terminology for when we lose electricity. It's a blackout. We don't have terminology for when we don't have water. That's just eerie. If you turn on a faucet, if you've ever had a summer home and you turn on the faucet and nothing comes out, it's kind of weird because you always expect something to come out. That all being said, for as much as we take water for granted, When you are hiking through the woods and you come across a brook or a river, if you ever come across a waterfall, or if you are standing on the beach and watching the breakers roll in, we can't help but be taken up by all of the magic, mystery, and everything that water is. We are over 75% water, so it makes absolute sense that we are so drawn to it. Now, the second aspect of water that I am in love with comes from this image right here. When we talk about other planets and the space exploration that is going on, when we talk about a comet that comes around every 400 years, they talk about that comet being covered in ice. We are going to Mars, and we've discovered other planets, way out in the galaxy or in other galaxies. And we talk about, oh, the potential of water on that planet, the potential of water on Pluto, which we haven't even gotten close to yet. Now, how cool is it that I currently have ice cubes in my freezer? Okay, I have ice, I have frozen water, I have water that comes out of my tap. I have something in common with the comet that comes around every 400 years, deep, deep in space. I potentially have something in common with the elements found on a planet that we hardly even know what it is or how it exists. We can only speculate from what we know that it might have water or once had frozen oceans on it. So the fact that water connects us to the universe like that is just amazing, because, we think of space as so vast and so other, but the fact is it's made up of all the same elements that we have here. They're just arranged differently. And it's just, to me, that's just magnificent that we have something in common, with the Milky Way and possibly beyond. Finally, the last really piece that I find so just captivating about water is that the majority, or really almost all the water on this planet, is 4.5 billion years old. So what does that mean? That means that the water on this planet is actually older than the planet itself. Now, some new water has been introduced as asteroids crashed into the planet and they had ice covered on them. Some new water has been introduced, but essentially it is safe to say that every molecule of water on this planet has just been recycled over and over again. What does that mean? It means that I have a glass of water right next to me, you might as well, that a molecule or all the molecules in that water have been inside of a cloud at one point in time. You're like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, all of those molecules of water have been inside of a tree and vegetation of some sort. All of those molecules of water in your glass, in your morning cup of coffee, have seen the inside of a volcano. In fact, that is what makes Earth unique from Mars, because what happened was Mars and Earth were very similar, it is said, and both of them got hit by multiple asteroids, which blew the atmosphere off the planet itself. However, within the crust of Earth is actually 5 oceans, like all of the water that is on our surface. There's 5 times that within the Earth. So through volcanoes erupting, Earth was able to rebuild its atmosphere. Mars was not. So the atmosphere of Mars got blown off, and it was not able to kind of heal itself or build a new atmosphere because it didn't have that kind of water. Now, lastly, every single molecule of water that is in your cup of coffee, that was in the shower or bath you took today, has been inside of a dinosaur's kidneys. So we all drink and shower in dinosaur pee. So that in itself is pretty incredible. Now, I myself am quite the romantic. So what I really like about this, and I'm going to connect it to part 2, is this right here, that a molecule of water in my glass right now could have been a mother's tear as she held her baby for the first time. It could have been your tear as you fell off your bike and scraped your knee when you were little. It also could have been somebody's last breath. And it also could have been a bead of sweat on a laborer as they were building the pyramids. This is how cool water is, because not only does it connect us to the rest of the universe, but water connects us to each other through time. And when you really deep dive on that, and you're probably not taking it there now, but if you ever really want to sit with that thought, it is just amazing and kind of mind-bending. If Earth were the size of a Honda Odyssey, all of the surface water would be a single half-liter Poland Spring bottle in one of the 13 cup holders. So we call ourselves the Blue Planet. We say things like water, water everywhere. However, if you were to shrink it all down and put it all together, the water that we have on the surface of our planet really doesn't amount to much, not as much as we think it does. So what is the problem? Well, the problem is this: since 1980, the number of extreme meteorological events has doubled. And we see scenes like this often, more often than not, and a lot more and more. Here we have Boston, a sign about climate change as the ocean comes over the seawall. This all goes back, and everything you are going to really learn tonight and need to think about water goes back to 5th grade, where we learned about the water cycle. Now, you don't necessarily need to memorize this slide, but I want to draw your attention to a few things. Over on the left, it says surface runoff, less than 1%. Interflow, 20 to 30%. Evapotranspiration, 40 to 50%. Just kind of keep those numbers in your head, because this is how water was originally designed to work, to be filtered, and to move through the earth. This is Mount Katahdin, and this is where I was talking about in a rural environment when there is a rainstorm. Here is a perfect image of what the watershed looks like. If it rains on the mountain, it is going to take weeks for that water to work its way through the soil all the way down to the lake at the bottom. And on its way, there is very little erosion here because the water is intercepted. Now, this is going to be important throughout the entire presentation. Like I said, we've overcomplicated things. Water is extremely basic. The water was intercepted. The velocity of the water was stolen. It was set to the ground where it could infiltrate. A raindrop falls at 20 miles an hour. If you have a head like mine, you know that a raindrop falls at 20 miles an hour. There are 2 types of water cycles, and this is what we didn't learn in 5th grade. So we have the long water cycle. That is the water cycle that we learned about in 5th grade, that the oceans evaporate, the clouds come off the ocean, they cool over land, and then we get these rainstorms. That's the deluge that we know. That is the heavy rainstorm we know. The more important and becoming scarce water cycle is the short water cycle. Now, the short water cycle is extremely local. The short water cycle is what causes dew on the plants in the morning. The short water cycle is what causes a sudden sun shower on a summer afternoon. The short water cycle is extremely local, and it is water that is, that is in the air through evapotranspiration, through small bodies of water like lakes and streams, or from puddles, or just from evaporation from the ground itself. It stays very local. Now, what is happening, that short water cycle, this is the nourishing water. The water that collects on leaves in the morning is taken in by the stomata of the leaves to nourish the plant. It's like putting on moisturizer in the morning. Those sun showers are very gentle, and they replenish the earth, over the course of the day. Without it being a deluge, that water falls very slowly, it's very gentle, and it gets reabsorbed very easily, unless we have a massive built-up environment, in which case that water evaporates very quickly, whether it be dew or a sun shower. It evaporates very quickly, goes back into the atmosphere, and we lose that local replenishing effect. You've probably seen this slide on social media, which is why I captured it, because what this slide says to me is that in the original design, Mother Nature designed for rainstorms. Mother Nature designed for excessive amounts of water flooding all at once. And all of our waterways were designed to take on massive amounts of water and then allow that water to recede. Now, we came along with our infinite wisdom and decided that those waterways were inconvenient, and we decided to put them into pipes, or we decided to fill them in. And so is it really a surprise in messing with Mother Nature's grand design that we have the flooding issues that we have? We put all that water into a pipe and we restricted it and we filled in our streams to build subdivisions, and then we get massive amounts of water, or we have water problems. No surprise there, we messed with the grand design. And now we see images like this when we watch the news, where in fact, we have, at least in this country, over 200 years of mansplaining to Mother Earth how she should be constructed. And that is our problem, and we are paying the price for it. Now I want you to look at this image, and I want you to remember the last image. In the last image, we had less than 1% surface runoff. Here we have 20 to 30%. This is the urban water cycle. This is what pretty much all of us on here are probably dealing with. Now look at evapotranspiration, 20 to 30%. It was up to 50% before. The interflow is 0 to 30%. That was 20 to 30 before. So what is this saying? Well, this is saying that our water is running off too quickly, that is not being integrated into the ground. It's not in the soil, it's not in the plants, it's going right into our waterways. Now, if you think back to that social media image I showed, that's one of the reasons we have the symptom of flooding, because the rivers were designed by Mother Nature to take up all of that water. It can absolutely handle that huge rainstorm, but it was designed to take up that water in a matter of hours, days, and weeks, not seconds and minutes. Right now, we are just rushing it all into that waterway, and that waterway was never designed to handle all that water all at once. So that's why these rivers flow and crest, and we have many of the issues we have, because we've been tampering with the environment too much without thinking about the repercussions. Now, I promise you, this isn't a downer of a presentation, but I do want to present to you kind of how we got to where we are. So here is where we are. And when you're watching the news or when you are reading articles, what they will say is, this is downtown Boston. And what they will say is, Boston has a flooding problem. There is major flooding in Boston. And planners and designers and architects will be like, we have to handle the flooding problem. That is the problem, because we do not have a flooding problem. Flooding is a symptom. We have an infiltration problem. So if we call it for what it is, then we can solve it. When you have a flooding problem, well, all you have to do is get the water out of there. You just have to get the water away. But that doesn't really do anything now, does it? Because we are nothing but a blue marble floating in space. So there is no such thing as a way. If we call it an infiltration problem, then what we have to solve? What we have to solve is, how can we infiltrate this water? When you call it what it is, and actually address the problem and not the symptom, you will get to the bottom of it and you will get the answer. This is how we deal with our flooding. That is how it all happens. And where does that water go? Like I just said, where is all that water going? That water's going away, isn't it? We're handling our flooding problem. That water's going away. Okay, show me a way. There isn't an away. There's just an elsewhere. And so we have, like I said, we need to address the problems, not the symptoms, because there isn't in a way. That water that you saw going down the drain was just going somewhere else, likely to a river or a waterway of some sort. And you saw how muddy that water was. It is no surprise that we have the water issues that we have. Now, for the most part, until recently, and I still believe we can figure it out, the cool thing about water is it's indestructible. We have yet to make water so dirty that we can't clean it. However, with the introduction of PFAS, we have really put ourselves to the test, because we have now introduced chemicals that we have yet to figure out how to pull out of water. And again, we need to address the problems here. We see many images like this, probably saw this in your area, certainly this summer. You know, last summer rained quite a bit. Summer before that, not at all. But at least where I am, not sure where you are, we've had about 7 weeks without rain. We just got about 3/4 of an inch, a couple of days ago, and it wasn't a fast, heavy rain, so it was pretty good, but it's only 3/4 of an inch after 7 weeks without rain. Doesn't really make all the difference in the world. We see things like this constantly. In fact, if you live anywhere in or around Boston and you actually start paying attention, usually every 2 to 3 months, there is a water main break, sometimes more. But at least every 2 to 3 months, there is a water main break within the city. This is because we built our water infrastructure, as you will see here, during a water main break back in 2019. This is actually a wooden pipe in Boston, a wooden pipe from the 19th century. So this just shows you how old Boston's water infrastructure is. Now in Arlington, where I recently moved from, Arlington and Belmont, their water infrastructure is at least 80 years old. So I'm just going to ask, real rhetorical question here. From the 19th century, do you think Boston's population, water demands, and impervious surface has changed at all? Yeah, of course. So this is what our problem is. We put all of our water infrastructure in the ground, put Band-Aid on Band-Aid on Band-Aid over it, and just kind of limped it along. And now it's to the point where if we are to bring it up to date, it is going to cost billions of dollars, and we're going to have to tear up the entire city. So now nobody knows what to do with it. So this, you could put your hands on your head and be like, oh no, we're doomed. What are we going to do? Well, what you do is you look at this as an opportunity. And I will tell you about that opportunity in just a second. So in hearing about water conservation, you will be told, and you may believe, oh, if I just didn't let the faucet run, or if I don't flush the toilet so much, or if I don't use landscape irrigation, the water problem in my town or in my city, it's my fault. Well, 12 billion gallons of water are lost per day globally due to faulty infrastructure. So while your municipality may have you believe that the water issues are your fault, and maybe some of them might be, or your neighbors, if they're watering every single day at high noon, then yes, they are part of the problem, not the solution. But that all being said, the municipalities need to start taking some responsibility here, because that outdated infrastructure is leaking a lot, and we are losing lots of water. So we don't have any control necessarily, those of us on the call, and I don't know all of you, so maybe you do, but those of us on the call don't really have control over what happens in our cities, nor do we have control over the water infrastructure of another country. But those of us in land care do have control over situations like this. This is simply just being responsible. I drove past this broken irrigation head for almost an entire summer. Now, I get up extremely early, and I was driving past this irrigation head at about 4:30 or so in the morning every single day. But the fact that nobody realized that this area was completely saturated, the fact that there wasn't any maintenance to catch the fact that all this water was being wasted throughout the entire season. Don't get me wrong, the crabgrass and the crack on the street was extremely happy. However, this is something that we can have control over. Another thing that we can have control over is how we treat water. So in Hopkinton, up the street from Weston Nurseries, there was about 300 acres, I think, turned into a subdivision. During that construction, you will see what was happening during that construction. It was 2 years ago that this was taken during that extremely rainy season. You are required by conservation, and you are required by the towns to put up straw wattle to control erosion. However, that is just a checkbox that construction companies and land clearing companies just check. And then we wind up with situations like this, where they threw up the straw wattle so they're in compliance, but then drove over it for months on end. So is it really controlling that erosion? No, not so much. And here's that subdivision going up. And there is all that water en masse. So it starts as a little raindrop, but those raindrops, when they get together with all their friends, create something like this. And this retention pond was severely undersized for the amount of runoff that it was receiving. And you can see the volume and the velocity that this water is traveling with. And you can see all of the sediment due to poor construction practices that water is taking with it. Now, this water all ran down and wound up in Weston Nursery's irrigation pond. So all of that sediment, which ended up being about 2.5 feet of mud by the end of the season, all washed into the irrigation ponds. Now, in a similar situation, same with those irrigation ponds, all the sidewalks in this subdivision were heavily salted by the landscape companies over the winter. So in 23, spring of 23, Weston Nurseries actually needed to pump out and then dredge the irrigation ponds because the salt level was so high. And if we hadn't been having conversations about stormwater runoff, of which I am a huge advocate for at Weston Nurseries, probably would not have checked the salt levels of the pond and probably would have killed all of the tree stock that we begin to bring in March. So things to think about and the power of runoff. So the two main issues regarding freshwater are supply and demand and stormwater runoff. We today are going to talk about stormwater runoff. As I said, I'm going to go into stormwater runoff and then talk about very simple methods that you can adopt on your property or adopt into your business to help control stormwater runoff. Now, in the city of Boston, it is now a law that if you have a major renovation or a new construction, you are required to keep all of your stormwater on your property. If we had made that a law 30 plus years ago, or even 30 years ago, we may not have the flooding issues that we have right now. So first, let's just address the definition. What is stormwater? Water originating from rainfall or melting snow that runs off across the land instead of infiltrating into the ground. Along the way, it picks up pollutants such as extra added nutrients and heavy metals as it runs across paved and unpaved surfaces. So this is another shot from Arlington, where we had a flooding issue. What difference does it make if the glass is half full or half empty when the water is polluted? And that is just a fact that we need to address. So while we're addressing and while we're thinking about stormwater, about 10 years ago, Boston ran this competition, Boston 2050, and they asked architects and land planners to submit designs of how we could deal with the rising sea levels in Boston and how Boston could adapt to those rising sea levels. And, you know, here we have canals with gondolas, we have oyster beds, and we have all of these storm channels, and this is all attempts to make rising sea level actually pretty and adopt it into the overall landscape of Boston. Boston is one of the 14 cities that will disappear if sea levels continue to rise at the rate and level they are rising. So defining green infrastructure. Nature-based solutions or green infrastructure is an approach to stormwater management that protects, restores, or mimics natural water cycles. The built environment isn't going anywhere. So we need to find ways to build it better. And that is exactly what we will be talking about moving forward. Now, For years, I said I've been doing this for over 20 years. For years, people have said, oh, that green infrastructure, oh, that stormwater management stuff, all that new stuff, that new technology, well, that's really not that, not that proven. We're not really sure about it. Well, this is Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is about, say, 350 years old. So we have an empire of people who decided to build a city on the side of a mountain, and not wanting that mountain to get washed away, they applied stormwater management systems. So you will see here that they terraced, for the most part, much of the landscape. And I want you to look at the black and white, because the black and white is levels and grades of gravel and stone and soil to help infiltrate the water and move it down the mountain, eliminating runoff so the whole entire empire didn't wash away. Like I said, stormwater management today is much the same way and very simple. Along the same lines, because what you are going to see is we are going to use different grades of gravel and different ways of managing the landscape to slow the stormwater and to infiltrate the stormwater, to reduce the volume, reduce the velocity, and increase the infiltration. Those are the 3 points that you just need to keep in mind anytime you're.
I didn't get that.
Oops,
Could you try again?
Sorry, Siri was listening to me.
No need to apologize.
So the challenges that I have found along the way, and that you will find, especially when you get onto a municipal level of dealing with green stormwater infrastructure, a lack of understanding. There is definitely a lack of understanding when you are talking to DPWs, when you are talking to urban planners. They're not necessarily sure what green infrastructure is. Lack of personnel. You will often hear that we don't have enough people to take care of stuff like that. Our people are trying to take care of all the storm drains and everything that we have. Mistrust in the ability of nature. This is one that I came up with, and it really hit home when it kind of hit me, because nature has been filtering water and controlling stormwater better than we've ever been able to for millennia. Yet we do not believe that nature has the ability to clean and infiltrate and control stormwater for some reason within our built environment. Bad experiences with mismanaged GI. And this is something that happens all the time on, say, Earth Day, or say a tech company wants to do a good thing, or even an Eagle Scout. Or somewhere along the way, somebody says, hey, we're going to build a rain garden at the library, and then nobody takes care of it. And it becomes what people say to me is, oh, that became a pit for invasives and trash. Well, on one hand, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to keep trash out. So you want your rain garden or bioretention system to catch trash. It will, because it's intercepting water and whatever is in the water. It will pick up many different weeds and plants. So it does need to be managed. And what the misunderstanding is, oh, we're going to build this rain garden, or we're going to build this bioretention system, and it's nature and it's just going to take care of itself. No, it's a filter. You have to change it just like you change your air filters, your oil filters, and everything else. It is a filtration system. So it needs to be managed. It's not just a garden, and even just a garden needs to be managed. But with the systems we're talking about, they do require maintenance, because they are performing a filtration service or an infiltration service. So these are not maintenance-free, set it and forget it. The most dangerous phrase in the English language, this is the way we've always done it. This is what I run into all the time, especially when we're trying to introduce new ideas. Let's just say Hopkinton, where I am now. They just totally tore up their streets and everything else. They tore up downtown, and then they basically put it back together in the same fashion that they did before. It's got some bike paths and the like. They widened the sidewalks, but when I was there consulting with them, addressing their street planning, they still have basically tree coffins being put into the sidewalks. They did not actually redesign the tree pits to have the soil volume needed to support a full-size tree. Funding Funding is coming along now. Funding has usually been a problem, but now the government is actually throwing a lot of money at green infrastructure, and we will touch on that in a little bit. And then the maintenance excuse. These are high maintenance. We don't have anybody to maintain these. We don't have anybody who knows how to maintain these. We can't be bothered with all of that extra maintenance. Well, we maintain everything else. We have constant street sweeping. You know, we repave. I mean, New England in summer is nothing but orange cones everywhere because they are repaving the streets. So everything man-made, everything of the such needs to be maintained. So the maintenance excuse falls relatively flat if you're talking to me. So we have a high need. There is a great need for green infrastructure professionals or people who know what they're talking about when it comes to this and just have an idea or somewhat of an understanding of water and somewhat of an understanding with plants. Because what's happening is we're having contests like Boston 2050, and those images were absolutely beautiful to look at. However, there isn't anybody out there who knows how to build that. And early in my career, I was called to look at a bioretention system at a condo. And the condo owner was there and they were saying, I paid all this money and these guys put this in and this isn't working. And I've had so many people look at it and I don't know why this isn't working, but I'm still getting all this flooding and it's not doing what it's supposed to. And this landscape architect said, this is all I needed. And so it really didn't take me that long to realize that, yes, the installation crew put in all the right plants and the installation crew built it just to the right size and the right shape. And all of that, and it looked absolutely perfect, except for one minor detail. And that was the fact that it was upslope from all the water that it was supposed to be collecting. Water does not run uphill. And if the construction company, which just happened to be the lowest bidder, but if the construction company actually knew what they were trying to achieve with that bioretention system, possibly somebody would have caught that and realized that they were building a garden upslope from the water that it was supposed to be capturing. But because people just go through the motions and think they're building things to specs, we oftentimes miss things. So we need people who are just informed and have an understanding of what green infrastructure is about and what stormwater is about. So what we will be covering today, we will be covering rain harvesting. We will be covering permeable pavements, rain gardens and bioretention systems. We will be covering and touching on green roofs and tree plantings. So that is what, yes.
We were scheduled to go till 8. I'm okay going to 8:15, but I just want to give you a time check.
Wow. Okay, then I got to go really fast. Sorry. All right. I do apologize. I just noticed the time. So yes, thank you. I'm going to have to fly through this and yeah, we will be more along the lines of 8:15. So please don't interrupt me for any questions. Let me get through this and show you what's what. I am sorry it took too long in the intro. All right. So rain harvesting systems. We have rain barrels and we have rain harvesting systems when we're talking rain harvesting. Why are we going to rain harvest? Well, life on this planet is directly connected with water. Without water, we will die within days. The EPA calculates that we use 165 gallons per day, 95 outdoors, 70 gallons indoors. And much of that is flushed and does not need to be potable or drinking water. Only 1%, and actually less than 1% of the Earth's water, fresh water, is available for our use. So what does this all mean for rain harvesting? In a 1-inch rain event on 1 acre, we can capture 27,000 gallons of water. So for those of us who live in urban environments, 1 acre is a little bit hard to imagine. So let's take that same 1-inch rain event and put it on a 2,000 square foot roof. Well, on that 2,000 square foot roof, we have 1,250 gallons of water. In New England, we receive 41 to 47 inches per year. So if you think about that as stormwater capture, you are actually able to capture a whole lot of water. So here's the math, just really quick. You're going to take your square footage and you are going to multiply that by the inches. Here it is inches per year. then you are going to multiply that number by 0.623, and that is the amount of water in gallons 1 inch deep on 1 square foot. So when you do all of that out in that 1,500 square feet, you can capture 38,000 gallons a year. So it actually adds up pretty quickly. It's real easy. This is like field math that I use when I'm discussing with people the potential of their rainwater capture. So how can we use rainwater? Well, here, mostly in Massachusetts, and it varies from county to county, but really the way you're going to be able to reuse rainwater is in the landscape and in our flower beds. You can use it to wash your cars, your patios, your decks, top off your ponds, your swimming pools, your hot tubs. If you are out west, you can use it to protect your property from wildfires. And what I wish we could do would be use it for toilets and laundry, because we do not need drinking water to flush our toilets or do our laundry in. So there's no need for that. But however, the water companies and the municipalities make their money with the water that comes in and the water that goes out. So most places will not let you interrupt that money flow by interrupting the water flow. So rain harvesting, we have rain barrels. Rain barrels are the gateway drug to rain harvesting. I have a love-hate relationship with rain barrels because I love them because they make you aware of stormwater capture and how much water is actually running off your roof. I have a dislike for them because you can only capture 50 to 75 gallons at a time, and there is no real pressurized way, unless you're going to add pumps and the like, to get that water out efficiently. A 50-gallon rain barrel will fill very fast because the normal downspout in a 1-inch rain event is putting out 110 gallons. So it's really not necessarily enough to capture all the water that you want. When installing a rain barrel, I absolutely suggest that you use one of these downspout diverters. What this does is this allows you to funnel the water into your rain barrel during a rain event. If your rain barrel is full, or if you take the rain barrel away for the winter, you can close that up and it will allow your downspout to function normally. Otherwise, as you see in the picture on the left, that water is just going to splash onto the ground all winter long. Here we have just an image of a rain barrel installation with the downspout diverter. If you would like to capture more than 50 gallons, we have rain harvesting systems. Rain harvesting systems include above ground tanks, some of which are not necessarily very pretty. I did not install these tanks, but I was actually brought in to replumb them. And here this client was capturing 1,000 gallons, and it was hooked up to a significant size pump so that they had kind of home pressure PSI coming out of those tanks, and they used them to water their gardens. Now we can take that to a much larger scale. This was out in California, an extremely impressive tank used for multiple purposes out there. It was actually plumbed to the house out there as well, but they can come in all sizes, but they are very hard to hide. If you think an AC unit's hard to hide, try hiding that. So what I've mostly specialized in are below ground tanks. Below ground tanks can be concrete cisterns. They can be fiberglass or plastic kind of torpedo looking tanks within the ground, or they can be these modular systems. Now the idea here, I'll just describe this image very fast, and I'm sorry that I took so long. The water is coming down the downspout. It is going into a catch basin. That catch basin has a grate on top to filter out leaves and the like. It also has a 200 micron mesh bag inside that will filter out much of the dust and any of the grit that comes off of the roof itself. And then it goes into the system, and then that system in this image is plumbed to both a pondless waterfall and to a spigot so that the water can be used to water the landscape. As I said, I was going to walk you through each installation. So it all starts with a very big hole. Most of these do. Here we have the pump house installed. The hole is lined with a rubber liner. Then these blocks are installed. Now, in the beginning, we used to use large rocks, but these blocks are great because each one of these blocks can hold 27 gallons of water and are actually H20 rated. That means that you could drive a car or a light truck over them and they will not collapse. This client wanted to both water their gardens during water bans and attract habitat. So we took that rain harvesting system. We added a fountain that was just recirculating the water within the system for the habitat value. And then we also installed it to a spigot and a timer so that they had just had to set the timer. When the timer goes off, the spigot opens, the pressure pump inside senses the drop in pressure, will start pumping. When the faucet closes, then the pump just shuts itself down. And so we collected about 1,200 gallons off their roof that they could use just in case there was a water ban within their neighborhood. Then they went ahead and they gardened around all of it and were able to support both habitat, both birds and pollinators with the wet rocks below, and capture their water. This is a similar system down in Dorchester. This is a lead home in Dorchester. So we had a native/native-R landscape that we put into the ground. And then they were able to irrigate their landscape. Now, because it was a native landscape, they actually only irrigated their landscape for one season and have never had to turn the irrigation on again. So now they just have this fountain with 2,000 gallons of water in reserve just in case they need it. Finally, we were able to do a kind of a hybrid garden. This garden right here, I mean, this rain harvesting system right here, you can see there's the liner, there are the blocks. This then ended up getting covered with sand and gravel, and we did a semi-pervious driveway that they wanted to have planted up with clover, chamomile, viola, and thyme. So you can see we planted all of that up. The clover is the workhorse and can take the traffic of the car going back and forth. And then the flowers just ended up coming up and adding interest along with the thyme on the periphery where the car was not and the full sun was. Now, with all of this, you can install a very similar system. If you're not trying to capture and harvest your rainwater, you can put in a dry well. So this was a very similar situation where we put a dry well in off the house to capture the sump pumps and the gutters because they were experiencing flooding. This is in Somerville. They were experiencing a lot of flooding because the sump pump itself was dumping out at the base of the foundation and then just making its way back into the basement and just on this infinite cycle. So we put all of that into a dry well. Now, a dry well doesn't capture that water for later, but it actually captures that water and allows it to infiltrate. So it takes it away from the foundation, allowing that water to infiltrate. Boy, I got to keep moving. I'm sorry. So we move into permeable pavements. Permeable pavements are a wonderful technology used for removing asphalt. They can be used as sidewalks, driveways, and the like. The paver, as you see here, the paver itself, the block itself is not permeable. It is made permeable by the joints and supported by the base below it. It is all about the base below. So here in this situation, this was also, I believe, in Somerville, and we had a situation where we had two homes, and you can kind of see the homes in this picture. Each home was a triple decker, so we had about 1,200 gallons of water in a 1-inch rain event, all dumping out between the two homes. And my client was getting water in their basement because these homes were built, in the early 1900s. So they were getting water in their basement. They had tried a dozen things and really hadn't figured out how to get through it. So we put in the permeable pavers here. Now you can see in that last slide, it all starts with a lot of gravel. That gravel is basically the storage vault for all the water. It provides all the pore space for the water to go to, similar to a dry well, so that it can seep into the ground. Now here you can see in this image, and I'll show you in some other images, there is no sand, there is no stone dust. It is just different grades of gravel. So the base layer, which would be sand or stone dust, is actually 3/8 chipped gravel. And the stone filling the cracks isn't stone dust. It's actually what's called the number 9 stone, which is like stone dust without the fines. So here we have the before. They took their asphalt away, but then it got extremely compacted with the car driving over it. My client's house is on the right. And then here we have the after. All we needed to do was give the water a better place to go, and it didn't want to seep through the tiny cracks of the foundation. Water will take the path of least resistance. Give it a better path, and it will follow that path. This whole system that we did will handle up to 6,000 gallons of water. We also did a very similar application at the Stone Zoo. Here, we were not able to do the entire parking lot. Sorry, the Beardsley Zoo. Here, we weren't able to do the entire parking lot, so we cut out sections of the parking lot, installed permeable applications. So this way, as the water is running down the parking lot, it doesn't actually make its way all the way to the river at the base of the hill. It gets infiltrated by these paver sections. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can infiltrate the water in what I say like is sips. So you have it running down an impervious surface, and then it falls into this, and you will have some more running down an impervious surface, and it falls into another little trap. So you're taking the water out of the system in sips. And here you can see those grades of gravel once again. Just another image of a permeable driveway. Same here, this customer wanted to take up their asphalt. They needed to take it up anyway because it was crumbling, and they wanted to shovel less. One of the benefits of permeable driveways is that during the freeze-thaw cycle, when we have the thaw, all the water works its way through the system, so you don't have that surface icing. You also don't have the frost heaves because the water doesn't sit below the pavers, so it doesn't push them up. Another technology is pervious concrete. The best way I suggest doing pervious concrete is precast systems like this, which is almost like the permeable pavers. You can do pour in place pervious concrete. It just takes a very long time to set because it doesn't have the fines. It's concrete without the fines. 10 years ago, it was really hard to find companies that would build this, that would make this for you, because they basically have to make you a special batch. Same with pervious asphalt. But you are finding more and more companies that will make these for you and either do a pour in place or a precast. And then finally, we have alternatives. This is an alternative made from recycled tires with a urethane binder that is real easy to mix together on large and small applications. I no longer use this product, but did use it for quite a bit on a number of projects because it infiltrates a whole lot of water. It's extremely pervious, and I really did like it for a while. What I didn't like is that the company promised that it was going to continue to be able to be recycled, and in the end, they never delivered on that promise. So I stopped using it. It's similar to having a sweatshirt made out of recycled bottles. Once you're done with that sweatshirt, essentially all those recycled bottles go back into the landfill anyway. But this was really easy to apply, and we did a large walking path, which you'll see in a bit, through the woods with it. Here, just as you can see, we were talking about the freeze thaw. This is just the 10 o'clock sun. So this walkway was just shoveled away, and once the 10 o'clock sun hits it, all the ice and everything just begins to melt away. No de-icing. You never use sand on these, and you don't necessarily need de-icer. Certainly takes care of itself. One of the best applications for this is in tree pits, I find, because you are certainly protecting the tree roots and you are keeping all of the trash and sediment out of the root zone for the tree. It's also very easy to walk over and very easy to maintain. So I like it very much on a small scale. This is at a golf course down in Connecticut, the Winged Foot Golf Course. They wanted to eliminate the gravel, which was going everywhere, and they wanted to keep their permeability. So this worked out really well for them there. And then here is that walking path that I told you about in Wellesley Office Park. This was put in by John Hancock. And it just meanders its way through the woods and along the Charles River. The idea here was not necessarily to infiltrate water, but to put in a path that did not disrupt the water cycle and making itself accessible to all people. Grid systems are another system that you can put in. This is better for overflow parking. If you are installing an area like the kids come home from college and you need to park on the lawn, this is a great way that you can have your lawn, but also prevent compaction. This is just an application of it that we used differently for a urban garden that we then covered it with mulch to give a stable surface for people to walk on. Finally, we have these grid systems. This is drivable grass. These are concrete tile slabs. They look like kind of bathroom tile. They're all kind of stuck together. in big squares. You apply them, you then fill them with soil. And here we planted that with the same clover mix that we talked about before, so that the client could make their way down into their backyard to a garage that they had down back there. As I mentioned, all of these things need maintenance. The pavers need to be vacuumed out every few years. You need to just suck out all that grout, all that little stone, and then you need to apply new stone. Otherwise, over time, they'll get clogged with some kind of sediment or organic matter. The alternatives usually need to be resealed every few years. So just remember, these are not without maintenance. Moving into rain gardens, and again, I'm sorry that I'm taking so long. So for rain gardens, we have rain gardens and we have bioswales. Those are the terms you are going to hear. A rain garden essentially is for one downspout at a home, and it is using the native soils, and it is planted with, I say, just use your favorite perennials. If you watch too many YouTube videos, you're going to overthink your rain garden. A bioswale or a bioretention system is engineered to infiltrate a certain amount of water at a certain rate, usually has an overflow and an underdrain. So it is a much more engineered system designed for parking lots and the like. So a rain garden is probably what you are going to be looking at. Here are the 5 basic rules of a rain garden. Must be at least 10 feet from the house. You do not want to infiltrate a few hundred gallons right next to your foundation, so be at least 10 feet from your house. It must drain within 24 hours, so dig yourself a test hole, fill it with water, let it drain, then fill it again. If that water is there for 12 hours or more, I suggest you do not put in a rain garden on your property. Never put a rain garden in an existing wet area. The idea of a rain garden is to infiltrate water. So if you are trying to drain or dry out a wet area on the property, build the rain garden upslope from that area, and you will reduce the amount of water that is actually in the lowest area of the property. Do not use wetland plants in a rain garden, because your rain garden, especially in a season like this, will be dry more than it is wet, which is why I suggest using your favorite perennials, because pretty much any perennial can stand being inundated for 12 hours or so and be just fine. And then plant for triple impact. You want to plant for beauty, you want to plant for water capture and water filtration, and you want to plant for wildlife. So why not use all of your native plants in your rain garden and have it double as a pollinator garden? Like I said, just checking the drainage. You want to dig a hole, fill it with water, let it drain. Make sure that your water is not there for more than 12 hours. Anything more than 24, you need to find yourself a new site. I'm going to just kind of move through this, but if you go to the Yukon website, you can find all the calculations that you need. There actually is an app for the iPhone. If you put in Yukon for an app on your iPhone, you will find that they have slide tools that you can calculate the size of the rain garden based on the square footage that you are calculating. Here's just an example of a rain garden on a client who had a slanted driveway and lived halfway down a slope on their street. So all the water would just rush in and pool in front of their garage. So here we created this rain garden full of native plants, just our favorite native plants, not even necessarily water loving, that would kind of capture all that water and just gave that water a place to drain to. Here we have them all set up, but here they are all planted in. And again, this is just a pollinator garden. You're going to get online and you're going to overthink about the zones and everything of the water. For a typical rain garden that isn't going to be holding a whole lot of water, you don't have to worry about that too much. And as you can see, it just really blends into the landscape overall. Here is a bioretention system in Cambridge. This is the large scale. Here you have to think a little bit more about your plantings. This, as you can see in the winter photo, is engineered with a drain all the way to the back. It's collecting the water from the street and the parking lots above. So this is actually designed to infiltrate thousands of gallons of water at a specific rate, but still it is planted up with many, many native plants in there, but not totally native. But it is beautiful, and it's a way to add habitat and green infrastructure and greenways to our urban environments while managing our flooding issues. This right here is just, I worked with Youth Build Boston and the City of Boston Parks Department, and we rehabbed 5 rain gardens, and then monitored them for an entire season. The idea behind that was to create green jobs. So we basically, the city said, we don't have people who know how to maintain rain gardens. I got with the youth of Youth Build Boston and said, I'm going to teach you how to rehab and build this garden, and then I'm going to teach you how to maintain it. And on the other end, the city will have hireable folk to fill these positions and to actually take care of their rain gardens. The biggest thing that we do when it comes to stormwater is overthink. Real quick on this one, this is in Gloucester. These people were facing weekly fines because their backyard was washing out into the channel. This is because you can see all the downspouts, all that water was rushing down, hundreds of gallons rushing down, washing out the backyard into the channel that was behind their home. Now they received a quote from an engineer for over $60,000. We were actually able to do this just for a few $1,000s following basic principles. Here we dug a 3x3 hole, about 18 inches deep, filled it with gravel, then put this bluestone on top of it. The pot is just an added thing to it to kind of mask the downspout. The idea here is to disperse the water. So the water hits the bluestone, it's dispersed over the bluestone, and then it sinks into that little pit. Now we've stolen the velocity and we've reduced the volume. Now you say, well, what happens when that little teeny pit overflows? Well, when that pit overflows, the water just creeps along the lawn rather than charging across the lawn, washing it out. So it took a real simple application to fix that problem, and it was only a few thousand rather than 60. This is a commercial client. You can really look at this picture, and I'll keep moving, but I want you to notice the grade here. So this person had 2 dry wells put in, had WeatherTech or basement sealant put into there, and they were still having water problems. When I got here, that downspout was facing straight off of the building. They couldn't figure out why they were getting water in their building. Look where the window well is. Water doesn't run uphill. So all the water was just washing into the window well. However, when you have a basement sealant company come in, they just go right into the basement. When you have a sump pump company come in, they just go right into the basement. But all it takes is a little site observation, and I was able to do this one for free. I took the downspout, wrapped it around the building, and said, if you still have problems in the basement, you give me a call and I'll come back. I never heard from them again. Signage is extremely important. If you are building rain gardens anywhere, especially in a public setting, you need to make sure that you tell people what they are and what they are doing. It's important that we educate those around us. Here is that app I was talking about. I'm almost there. So green roofs. Green roofs, this is kind of the deep end of the pool, but they are not hard necessarily to adopt. Green roofs are very simple and simple to install and simple to manage on a small scale. It's a lot more complicated on a large scale. The big thing here's a client, they wanted to put a green roof on their garage. And you can see they live in a Frank Lloyd Wright house, and they wanted their house to blend into the landscape. So they wanted to have an ericaceous green roof put on the roof here to blend into all of the plants of the landscape. When somebody asks you to do a green roof, the first thing I ever say is get a structural engineer to look at it, because people will say, oh, just put it on my shed. And I say, I'm not going to put it on your shed. And they're like, why not? It's just a little shed. It's a little green roof. I say, because you keep your lawnmower in there or your motorcycle in there. And if that roof collapses, then I'm on the hook. So I will not touch anybody's roof until a structural engineer's looked at it. If they want a roof bad enough that they get a structural engineer, then I say, okay, now I need a roofer to look at it to make sure that this roof is entirely waterproof. Because if when I'm done and the roof is no longer waterproof, then I know it's my fault, rather than not knowing if it was my fault or not before, and then I'm just going to get blamed. So I always have a roofer check out the roof to make sure that it is waterproof before I touch it. The green roof application is real simple. You have the rubber membrane that is part of the roof. Then you put down a root barrier. This root barrier prevents any roots from getting into the pores or underneath the seam tape of the rubber membrane that is on the roof, which would cause problems later on as those roots matured. On top of that, you put a drain mat. This drain mat has plastic dimples on the bottom, which creates a vapor layer for the water just to run off, should it pass all the way through the other layers above. On top of that, this was only 4 inches of soil that we were dealing with. So I wanted to make sure that in full sun on a roof, it didn't dry out too quickly. So I put water retention fleece. This is like adding a sponge underneath the soil layer to make sure that we're holding a little extra water and capturing as much water as possible. Then on top, we put a special soil blend that we could plant bearberry and low bush blueberry all over the roof. And there you have it, a residential green roof. Not necessarily too hard. You do need the structural engineer, you do need the roofer, and the rest of it is relatively easy. This is a project we did in Boston, and we actually just completed 30 bus shelters in Boston. This was a pilot project done 10 years ago. 10 years later, the new mayor called and said, I would like to do this as phase 1 of my stormwater initiative. So my friend and I just finished putting 30 green roofs across Dorchester and Mattapan. We did along the 28 bus line. You will be hearing about it soon. But the idea here was to show that small steps can make a great impact and bring the conversation of green roofs down to street level. We seeded them with native plants. During the pilot project, they were up during the summer. They had to come down during the winter. So the plants never really took off. And then when the money ran out, so did the project. However, like I said, it was enough to get people's attention. And 10 years later, here now we've done it. The key here that I want you to see down bottom left, you can see that the green roof is 81 degrees and the sidewalk is 127 degrees. So we took a whole lot of metrics and measurements to prove that even on a small scale, we can have a large impact just taking bus shelters from around the city. Here is just runoff from a green roof bus shelter and from a regular bus shelter to prove to everybody that the filtration process is real. So we are holding water and mimicking the watershed, and we are also filtering water, mimicking the watershed. And finally, and I'm only a little bit over, we have trees. Trees are the most inexpensive, easiest way to help maintain stormwater. Trees a mature tree takes up 25% of atmospheric carbon, but the trees are perfect because they reduce the velocity, they reduce the volume, so they catch all that water. They gently set it down to the ground, but it takes a while for the water to work its way through those leaves. They gently set it down to the ground. It infiltrates into the ground. Trees are very easy. What we have to do is make sure that we plant our trees correctly. As I mentioned about the street coffins earlier, we have to make sure that our trees get to be of a mature size. I met with a municipality here in Massachusetts, and they were all proud of themselves because they were going to plant 500 trees across the city. I said, how about you plant 250 trees properly and take the rest of the money to make sure that you do so? They looked at me like I was a total jerk and they had no idea what I was talking about. And then I explained to them that unless a tree reaches maturity, it is not going to be able to actually sequester the carbon that they wanted it to do. And that the lifespan of a street tree is 5 to 8 years. So it really had no chance. And that without any soil volume, it certainly has no chance to mature whatsoever. So we need to make sure that we plant our trees properly, but by adding more trees, this is one of the best and cheapest stormwater techniques that you can apply. So when we are talking about climate change and when we are talking about any of this is one of my favorite quotes. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a better model that makes the old model obsolete. So don't shame people when it comes to climate change. Just do what you're doing. Build that pollinator garden, build that rain garden, get that interest, get people interested in it, show them that the way we've always done it, the most dangerous phrase in the English language, isn't the way to do it, that there actually is a better way, and have them adopt it. If you don't believe me, think about your cell phone. They come out with all these cell phones every couple years or every year, and then pretty soon you're looking at your cell phone and realizing what you have is totally obsolete, and so you get yourself another one. That's exactly what we're doing here. We are just building a better model to make the old model obsolete. If you would like to focus more in stormwater infrastructure, you can go to EnviroCert. And EnviroCert has the National Green Infrastructure Certification Program. So you can be a stormwater, it certifies you as a stormwater construction professional, inspection professional, maintenance professional. not a certified designer, but you are certified to build, inspect, and maintain rain gardens. So if you would like to adopt that into your business, EnviroCert has a number of stormwater certifications. That right there, I am 6 minutes over. Right here is all my information. I thank you so much for staying with me. I'm sorry that I ran over. This is all my information. Since we don't really have time for questions, I don't think, I would like you to take down Trevor S at westonnurseries.com. I would love for you to just check out Re-Earth Boston on Instagram so you can see all the stuff that I've been up to over the years. But if you end up tackling a permeable paver project, a green roof project, or even a rain garden, I offer this out all the time. Please do contact me. Say that we were in this conversation together. Tell me what you have. We'll get into a back and forth as far as looking at your pictures, talking about your calculations. I am more than happy to help empower you to implicate these systems into your landscape or your clients' landscapes. Again, I'm sorry for going over, but thank you so much.
Trevor, thank you. That was great. Do not apologize. I wish we had 3 hours to talk to you. So thank you so much, everybody. I put Trevor's email in the chat. If for any reason you lose it or I wrote it wrong, I think it's correct. You also can email me and I'd be happy to connect you with Trevor separately. So thank you, everybody. Trevor, thank you so much. And we'll see you in October.
Take care.
Bye.